It's my pleasure to be joined today by Faye Thompson, running for the Idaho House of Representatives in District 8, Seat B. So without any further ado, Faye, thanks for joining me. And how's it going?
That's been going really good. I've been awful busy campaigning, spending every week. I spent 3 days in Mountain Home and um, meeting people and just having a great time down there, getting to know everybody. And so every time I go down there, I give up all of my literature and my signs because people want to put them out. So that's a pretty positive feeling. And yeah, just doing pretty good. Had a great Lincoln Day up here in Valley County last weekend. And of course, you were our speaker and it was a really good turnout. And I've had a lot of people start to donate since that dinner. So I've been very pleased with the outcome.
Cool. So how did you get here? So, I mean, what's the journey of your life that brought you to this point where you are running for the state legislature?
I guess I've been kind of interested in politics a good part of my life, but I've never been involved until my husband decided to run for the U.S. Senate back in 2006, 2007. And of course, he lost that race, but we got a pretty good taste of it and started getting involved with the Central Committee and going to all the Lincoln Days every year and stuff like that. And then about 3.5 years ago, I started getting involved with the Central Committee and here in Valley County, and they elected me vice chair. And 6 months later, I was asked to run for the chair slot. And so I've been doing that for the last 2 years, and I'll be coming up for reelection at the reorganization meeting, but I've really enjoyed it. And then this last year, with not this year's legislature session, but in 23, I started watching a very serious trend with our current legislators in District 8, and our Central Committee censured 2 of them, and not my opponent, but I just decided that it was time that somebody stepped in, and I would ask different people, and it finally came down to, well, it was my turn to do it, I guess. And so I announced last November that I was going to run against Megan Blanksma, and it's been really great ever since. But we needed balanced representation through the whole district, because right now we don't have that. And we need some honest Republicans to represent us. And I believe that I am one, and my opponent really isn't. She votes with the Democrats. And so we have to have some serious change from the grassroots level. And I think we're going to get some of that this year, I hope.
You mentioned balanced representation. I'm looking at your district on a map on my other screen here. It's huge. It might be the largest district in the state. I'm not sure.
I think it is.
It's, Valley County, Custer County, Boise County, and Elmore County. That goes all the way from up north of McCall, down all the way to Twin Falls, almost to Twin Falls. It actually borders my district, 14, right? It's literally a 10-minute drive from my house, but then it goes all the way to almost to the Montana border on the other side. So, a couple of questions about that. You mentioned balanced representation. So tell us, I guess first, tell us what you mean by that.
What I mean by that is right now that all 3 of our representatives and the senator combined are in Elmore County. And Elmore County is culturally and economically so different than Valley, Custer, and Boise counties, because our 3 counties up here, we've got mining and logging and different industries like that, where Elmore County has the air base, and they have a lot more agriculture than we do. Most of the agriculture we have up here is cattle that come up, they graze for the summer, then they're hauled out to market or wherever. And so we're just so different. And if I get in, I would be in Valley County. Rob Beisringer gets in, he would be Boise County. And then Christy Zitto, and she gets elected, she'll be Elmore County. And we just all feel that we would be much better off if the whole district had representation. Custer County does, the closest thing we have for representation there would be Dorothy Moon. So we all 4 work really well together, and we could really bring a real good balance and a real good voice for our district. in the legislature all around.
So bouncing off that, then having to campaign in such a large district. You mentioned before we started recording that you spent some time, or maybe it was after, that you spend a lot of time in Mountain Home. Obviously, that's where a lot of people are, so that's where you have to go. But what's it
Yeah.
like campaigning in such a large district? And then when you're elected, how are you going to represent such a large and diverse district?
Like one thing that I've been able to do is just building relationships with a lot of the people that are concerned about what's going on in the district, but they're in Elmore County. And I've got some amazing volunteers down there that are they're going door knocking and the like, campaigning for me. And they actually are precinct committeemen, they're central committee members, they're subcommittee members of the central committee down there. And they're the contact between the county that they represent and the legislature. And that would be the same in all four of the counties that we would represent. So we would have those voices filtered through the central committee primarily. But we would also have to spend some time in each of the counties getting to know all of them. And I know I've put a lot of miles on my car. I spend 3 days a week in Mountain Home and getting to know people, mostly in meet and greets, and they come and join us. And we've had a lot of new people. Every week we have some new people come in to meet us. And of course, Valley County, I've been here for 50 years, so a good portion of this county know who I am. And with my husband being a county commissioner, he's well known. And so we have, that contact. Boise County, we know, or I know quite a few people in the Garden Valley area, not so much in Idaho City. I'm still working on that a little bit. And then, of course, the same in Custer County, we have a lot of contacts through the Central Committee. So I would just maintain those relationships going forward.
As you've been going out and talking to people, whether, Republican PCs or just, regular people at meet and greets and events, what are you hearing from people? What are their concerns and their priorities for the legislature?
Oh, right. I think the biggest one right now for people is the crisis at the southern and now the northern border. Because if I heard correctly, the northern border, the crossing of suspected illegal aliens in Idaho, and it's not a very big border up there, has actually increased over 600% in the last few years. So they're not just coming through the southern border, they're coming through the northern border. A lot of people are concerned about that. We see the big white buses coming into the state and then leaving the state empty. And so we don't know where they're all going. So that is probably the number one concern about people. And then expansion of Medicaid to pay for the illegal aliens for Medicaid, welfare, food stamps, and people aren't very happy about that. And then, oh, the other thing, I can't remember what that was, but that's been the main concern. It just kind of blasts out there for everybody.
Yeah.
And with my opponent, she's, voted in favor of supporting all this and claiming that we need illegal aliens to provide a workforce for us in Idaho.
Well,
And I think that's almost slavery, that's not that's not good for the illegal aliens.
I was going to say that brings up, that what was a contentious debate this year. There were two different memorials that went through. One of them was really harsh. It said that Idaho's, industries, agriculture, hospitality, were kind of exacerbating the crisis by wanting a flow of cheap labor and
Right.
calling on the Congress to impeach the president. And that one didn't pass, but the one that did was from the opposite perspective, that we need to reform the system so that we can have a good supply of migrant labor. And that's really where the debate lies. And right in the middle of that, there was this report that said there were 35,000 illegal aliens employed in Idaho. And so a lot of the debate, especially from Eastern Idaho, was that if we restrict the border, we close the border, we crack down on immigration, we deport the illegal aliens, then we're going to end up tanking our own economy. So I guess it's kind of a multifaceted issue. How do you address the issue? How do you secure the border? How do you enforce our laws? What do you do about the people who are here? And what do you do to support the industries that, for better or for worse, have become dependent on migrant labor?
Oh, that's a really big question. I think first off, we need to enforce the laws that are already on the books. We have immigration law. And like our president now says, oh, the Republicans won't let us do this because we're not enforcing the laws at the border or whatever. And so it's become just a political fight. But we need to enforce the border. And yes, we will need to send them home wherever they're coming from. And then we as Idahoans, we've got to tighten our belts and start realizing that we did once have a very strong work ethic, and we can still have that in a lot of ways. And people will just, if they want good help at the restaurants, well, people are going to have to start going to work. I know that we have labor laws that prevent teenagers from going to work anymore. And I know I started working in the potato fields when I was 13 years old. And I've always had a work ethic that I've always worked. And I was a single mother for a long time before I met my husband, Neil. And I always worked, and I was able to do it without taking any help from the government. We've got to stand up once again and start teaching our children. How we make that happen, I don't know. I'm sure that there are some ideas out there, but I don't have them right now. And but we do need to start enforcing the laws at the border.
I know Senator Zeiderveld actually introduced a bill this session to loosen the rules on youth employment to allow teenagers and young people to do a wider variety of jobs. It never got out of committee, but it was an
Yeah.
interesting idea.
Oh, yeah, I would support something like that, or co-sponsor even, because I think that that would really help. We used to, like grocery stores would have teenagers put the customers' groceries in bags and carry them out to their car for them, even if they were never allowed to be tipped by the customer. But even if we opened something like that up to where these young people could go to work and do service like that and get tips from a customer if the customer thinks that they deserve it or whatever, just like in the restaurants. Why not? It's not a job that's going to cause harm to their bodies. And it really, it's a safe job. And there's plenty of others like that out there that they could be doing. And even serving tables in restaurants, or they're good gateway jobs for students to get involved in the workforce.
Well, speaking of workforce, when you work, you pay taxes. And speaking of taxes,
Yes.
that's also an issue that I've heard a lot about. How's that for a segue? Property taxes is probably the biggest issue I've heard people bring up, in that obviously, if house values keep rising, the money we owe continues to rise. And it's a very complex issue because there are so many taxing districts involved, library districts, fire districts, school districts, counties, cities, etc. And each of them needs money to operate. So how do they get it? We had the bill last year that lowered property taxes, House Bill 292. And then this year, the governor's facilities fund for schools, that changed the way that taxes were done. It pulled some from property taxes over to sales tax. It was a big complex bill. So
Yes.
what do you think of what they've done so far? And what else would you like to see from the legislature with regards to property taxes?
With property tax, I don't know that we can, because of all those add-ons with EMS and because that's having to be changed statewide, because the state does not support EMS services. So it's down on the counties. property taxes is really tough because sometimes it's really high. I think that we can maybe do better by doing away with either income tax or even sales tax on food. And that would help balance it out and maybe even be a better support for people that are struggling to pay those property taxes, because then they can hang on to their own money. Another thing would be, and I know this has been talked about by many people, is once a home is paid off, they stop paying for their property taxes, or they reach retirement age or 65 years of age, they stop paying property tax. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be looked at. What's the perfect way? I don't have the formula, but I think that, it's going to entail the state government to cut back on programs that frankly the taxpayer really doesn't need to be paying for. And a lot of that is through health and welfare.
Yeah, that's that's another big discussion we've been having, as a party, as the Republican Party. What is the role of government? There's a lot of folks who say it needs to be scaled back to just protecting life, liberty, and property. But then others look at government and say, well, there are things the government can do to help people or help organizations that help people, to promote business, to invest in things, as the governor likes to say. Uh, where do we draw that line, and what do we do about all the things that the government's involved in now? How can we scale that back without just letting everything collapse?
Well, some of the things we can start with cutting back with, like I said, health and welfare is no longer supporting the DEI and those programs that a lot of people label as woke or LGBTQ. Those should be funded by private organizations, not people's property or people's taxes. And that's a lot of money is going to those. Just like last year, they sent $35,000 to support the Pride Fest. They had to get that back. And in the process, when that came out, there was other businesses that actually withdrew their support of the Pride Fest because of it. They didn't realize about the drag shows and for kids and stuff like that. And when they were made aware of it, well, they pulled all their money back. But those are actually the businesses like that, and private individuals are the ones that should be supporting that. Just like endowment funds and stuff like that. Taxpayer money shouldn't be going to that. I would even go so far to say that the arts and humanities, why are taxpayers supporting that? They get a whole lot more money from private organizations, and I mean, taxpayers don't need to be sending millions of dollars to these programs. And I'm probably going to get a lot of pushback on that from certain people, but those are social ideas that need to be outside of government. And so that's just a beginning. There's a whole lot, I'm sure. And not only that, the health and welfare, I'm hitting on them pretty hard, but health and welfare, it started out, they had $10 million worth of misappropriation of funds. But now I believe, I heard the other day, it's gone up to $70 million. It's a lot of money that could be used for other things. So we need better leadership in that department, and definite cutbacks and stronger restrictions on who's going to get that money, rather than them sitting home and collecting that check. They're to go out and they need to go to work. And that used to be the way it was.
When you're in office, would you want to sit on the Health and Welfare Committee then to be able to exercise some oversight there?
I'd love to.
That a lot of people have become dependent on government.
Yes.
Both businesses and organizations, but also people in general. Earlier this year, Representative Redmond introduced a bill to put some thresholds and standards in for Medicaid expansion. And I recall hundreds of people signed up to testify against because they were worried that they would lose their benefits. So every time there's some government program that's created to help people with good intentions, as a safety net, well, then people just inevitably become dependent on it. And then at that point, you can't remove it, both because, well, you don't want them to starve, but also because once enough people once a large enough constituency is dependent on a program, then there's no political ability to remove it. So what do we do about this? How do we scale it back?
Scale it back on a piece by piece basis. You give recipients, for example, a timeline. You have 2 years to get yourself a full-time job. And especially if they're not working. And so you put some timelines in there. It's not going to be an overnight fix. Absolutely not. But it can be a process that they can work towards becoming independent once again. But they're going to have that push to do it.
Shifting gears a little bit, I was looking at electoral history here. The incumbent in this race has been in office since 2016.
Mhm.
So that's what, 4 terms?
I think so.
And
Yeah.
this is the first time that she's actually faced a primary challenger ever
Yeah.
since then, which is surprising to me. So, do you think has to do with maybe the redistricting, or um, has have people just been happy with her representation thus far? What's your sense as far as the political calculations as you've been going about campaigning?
Well, the redistricting has a big part with it, had to do with it. But it also has to do with her voting record has changed dramatically over the past few years. She has begun to be more supported with the IACI members and like the Idaho Dairymen's Association, the Farm Bureau, all of the big ag money and the like. And I think that she started voting to favor them rather than the taxpayer and her voter. And also with all of her spending bills, people are starting to pay more attention. That is one of the things that COVID and the lockdowns, they started, and everything that's happening with Donald Trump anymore, people are paying more attention to people's voting records and what they're doing. And there's definitely a bunch, plenty that choose to stay willfully ignorant to what's going on around them. But I really think that I have a pretty good chance of doing this, winning this. And just because of her voting record. And yes, she has a completely different district now than what she had in the past.
Hmm.
A different, yeah, a
Different set
uh,
of voters.
different set of voters. Thank you.
You mentioned IACI and the dairymen and
Mhm.
those groups. I just did some quick math. So far, as of the now on the Sunshine reports, you've brought in about 11% of your contributions from companies and uh, organizations, and your opponents brought in about 80% from companies.
Mhm.
So that's a pattern I've been seeing throughout the state. Uh,
Yeah.
Endorsements from IACI, the Association of Commerce and Industry, and the Dairymen and the Farm Bureau. Well, maybe not that last one, but a lot of the big organizations, when they endorse the businesses and the those interests, they endorse one group, and then the conservative or liberty organizations such as Idaho Freedom Pack or Citizens Alliance, they're organizing a different group, and there's very little overlap. So, what's going on in the Republican Party with regards to our relationship with business? At one time, go back to the Reagan era, and Republicans loved business. We loved even big businesses because they were not the government. It was free enterprise, the free market. And now it seems like there's a lot of, distrust there. A lot of, you know, it's like there's a divide there. So, first of all, what do you make of that? And second, how do you have a relationship with the business community in which you know give them what they need without necessarily giving them undue influence over the political process?
Oh, I know that I have always heard that when you're new to in the legislature, you get swarmed with lobbyists.
That's
Everybody
true.
wants your attention. And I'm going into this with that realization that I'm going to have a strong backbone and carry that well and know when to say no and when to listen and when to say yes. And I know that I've built some really good relationships with people in the legislature this year with all the time that I spent down there. I have a lot of good people that I can lean on to help me make the decisions that I will need to make. Um, and that would help me a great deal. But you do still have to have somewhat of a relationship with these people.
Mhm.
Like the Idaho Association of Counties, my husband is a member of that. And so as a legislature, I've got to be able to learn how to work with them and just having dialogue with these people and begin to communicate rather than just have such a hard line of this yes or no, and not let them to play those games like I'll support you in this bill if you support me in this bill, but that bill they want you to support them in does not align with your standards and your pledge to the platform, the Republican platform and such. So I know that it's going to be a big learning curve for a lot of those businesses, but I do have to have those dialogues with those people. I know that. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Sure.
hopefully it helps.
Well, it leads right into another question, and that is, how do you decide how to vote on things? Some things are obvious. You know,
Right.
most gun bills, abortion bills, the big ones. Should public funds go to transgender surgeries? I mean, maybe it wasn't so easy for some people, but I think for you and for I
Oh,
that
yes.
would be an easy
Yes.
call. But there were
Right.
others that were very complex, like the school funding bill, for example. That was a ridiculously complicated bill, or the fentanyl bill. Obviously, we need to do something about fentanyl. It needs to be, people who traffic it need to be, put in jail. It needs to be kept out of our state. But there were some questions raised about the way that the bill went about it. In the end, a lot of people voted for it, I think, because they didn't want, their opponents coming to their voters saying, this person doesn't support law enforcement, this person doesn't want to get rid of fentanyl. And so sometimes the rhetoric of a bill can cause the details to get lost. So say you're there next January and you've got something really complicated. What's your process for figuring out how to vote on it?
Well, one, read the bill,
Yeah.
read it, and then go to those people that I have relationships with, that have a little more experience that I do, and people like you, and um, reach out to these people that have that knowledge to help me make that decision, so that people that I could bounce ideas off and thoughts about the bill and stuff like that. I'm not somebody that's going to just make a very rapid decision. And we need, I know some bills move really fast through the legislature, but I don't want to make those rash decisions. And so I would lean on other people to help guide me until I can get my feet solid on the ground. I mean, we all have a first day and we all have, you can't get around that. Even my opponent had her first campaign, her first election, and her first day in office. And so she had to go through the same processes as I will have to go through.
Well, one thing I've really enjoyed about living in Idaho these past 6 years is how the political classes, for the most part, at least in the legislature, are just regular people. I think there are some people in the bureaucracy who maybe, are whatever is not regular people, but you know, getting to talk with people, whether candidates or incumbent legislators, uh, they're just folks who, were living their lives, doing their jobs, raising families, and they decided to get involved because they saw a problem that needs solved,
Exactly.
and you're there. And I've really felt like there's not much of a wall between the people and the government here, and I've really appreciated that. So I, you know, you've got a big district. I assume you'll have a way to, when you're in office, to stay connected with the people of the four counties.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there again, I've built relationships in the four counties, and I really want to have that open door, open telephone. I want to communicate with my constituents, with the central committees. I want to hear from them, and I do want to. I'm not one to make a lot of promises, but I know that there really has not been communication between the legislators that we have now and the constituents, and that's been the case even before my opponent. I would like to see that culture change. And so that is something that I want to be able to work on, and hopefully I can be somebody that will be um, easily approachable with different things. Doesn't mean I can fix everything. A legislator can't fix everything, but at least they can look into it for the person and see what can be done or not be done. And just to be responsive to my constituents for sure.
That, you know, kind of makes me think of something I've been tossing about, and that's the relationship between legislators, PCs in the Republican Party, and
Mhm.
voters. Yeah, we've seen over the last couple of years, uh, county and district committees have censured some of their Republican representatives. I think you said the two others in your district
Mhm.
received
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
and then of course they fire back and say, well, I don't represent the party, I represent the people, I represent the voters, and obviously it's the voters who will ultimately decide. And what do you think about the relationship there? d- are the PCs more conservative than the voters, or is it just that the maybe the loudest megaphones in the media are coming from a different perspective? I'm really trying to figure it out.
Me too, in a way. It's like my being the chairwoman of our central committee up here, my PCs are very quiet. And because of that, we're not facing the conflict that others like in Boise County and in Elmore County, a lot of the good conservative PCs are actually being faced with um, opponents that are not true conservatives or honest conservatives. And so I've been really fortunate up here. It's these organizations that are pushing this change just because of a serious dislike of one individual and how they're doing things is really sad for them. It doesn't give me much faith in their integrity at all. And because they flat are, I'm going to say it, a bunch of angry old men that lost their authority, lost their power in elections, and they're trying to figure out how to get it back. And they're hurting the voters in the process.
Do you think the parties should have a role in informing voters and about making recommendations in a primary, censuring Republican legislators, or at least calling them to the carpet to explain their votes with regards to the platform?
I do. If you're going to sign a pledge to the platform, you should be held accountable for that. Yeah, there might be some minor mistakes, but like last year when with the transgender laws and everything that the two that our central committee censured, and they were holding those voters or those legislators accountable for blatantly standing against what they pledged to do. And I think being held accountable, and I would expect them to do the same thing for me. If I flat went backwards on the pledge that I stood on and signed my name to, sure, hold me accountable. That I'm not saying that I shouldn't ever be held accountable for anything. I will take responsibility for the mistakes that I make. I always have. And they didn't, and so they got censured. And they were censured by all four counties
Hmm,
in our
interesting.
district. Yeah. Every single county censured them.
Well, it's been interesting to watch the committees, the county and legislative district committees, get more involved in the process and more vocal. We'll see how that translates into the primary, as the voters come out and they're going to have their say.
Yeah, that's very true.
And
Very true.
um, is there anything that you want to see changed in the Republican platform?
No, not really. I think it's a pretty solid platform. And I know most of it stands for my faith-based morals
Mm.
and beliefs, with the abortion and the, marriage between a man and a woman, and just everything in the pledge I believe in. And so I have no problem whatsoever standing by it and signing that pledge, which I did.
I remember when I, first started getting involved in Idaho politics, and I read through the platform and saw that the Idaho Republican Party officially calls for the repeal of the 17th Amendment, which was direct election of senators. That's that impressed me because that's a, you know, such an interesting issue, and it's I don't know, part of how perhaps our country has gone astray since its founding. So the fact that some delegates decided that was a good idea to keep in there, that jumped out to me. But well, this summer we'll get together at the convention in Coeur d'Alene, and we'll
Yes.
evaluate new planks, see what's coming up. Wonder if
Yep.
anyone's going to do anything about AI. That's a big issue right now.
Oh, yeah, I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around that because, all these robocalls and stuff like that, they sound like real people and they're
Yeah,
not. It's like, oh my goodness.
yeah,
Yes, the AI it is, I think it can be a very serious problem
yeah. Who
in
knows?
many.
Maybe I'm just an AI, you know, avatar right now.
Well, I've kind of done some, I started trying to use it to develop my own website, and it just went so far over my head. It was like, okay, I got to hire somebody to do this because I don't know what I'm doing, because it changes. You dictate something to your computer and then it dictates it back to you. And it's so different than what you actually just said that, is that really what I mean? So it was, yeah, it's over my head. That's definitely something I've got to learn a little more about.
That's that's the thing about being a lawmaker is you've got to know so many things.
So
You've got to
much.
quickly become an expert in so many fields. Because
Yeah.
this year they did debate and vote on several bills related to AI, both people making, deep fake pornography of real people, which is, a
Yeah.
terrible thing, or making an AI video for a campaign where shows a candidate saying something they didn't actually say, and how should you handle that? But then also other fields too, law and water usage and natural resources and
Law enforcement.
city development, law enforcement.
Yeah.
When they were debating the fentanyl bill, they're talking about, okay, exactly how much fentanyl does it take to be a lethal dose, and how small of a thing is that? It,
Yeah.
it's honestly, I don't know how a part-time legislature can even do it. Uh, I was overwhelmed after just a few days of all the bills, so I can't imagine how the people actually voting on them felt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially this year when they had more than they've ever had before. And, I don't know, we're citizen legislators now. And that's what I believe that's what our Constitution, Idaho Constitution, holds to, the citizen legislators. And that's why we're only in session for 3, 4 months at the most ever. And that's a rarity. But there might be a day that we're going to have to change that. I don't know.
Yeah, I go back and forth on that.
Yeah.
Legislators are paid about $20,000 a year for 3 months of work, but it's really not 3 months of work. There's,
No,
those three
this,
months are long days and long nights. And then outside of that, you have campaigning and meeting with constituents, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with the lobbyists, meeting with the government agencies, preparing for legislation. So it really is a full-time job. So maybe it should be paid that way so that more people who maybe aren't independently wealthy or retired can take part in the process. But then again, we don't want government to become, you know, a full-time career either. So I don't know. I'm still divided on that issue.
yeah, it would have to, we would definitely, if that went that way, we would have to have term limits for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, just like our a Congress in DC, I think we should have some term limits. Um, I've I've said that publicly before and signed
Mhm.
a pledge to support that if it were to ever come about. But I don't know that that's ever going to happen.
Uh,
I, I don't know what we're going to do with DC.
the
It's
funny
just,
thing is that apparently we had term limits here in Idaho. It was passed by Citizens Initiative, but then a few
yeah.
years later, the legislature decided that they would rather not have that, and so they passed a law repealing it.
And if I remember correctly, that there was a time when senators in Idaho had 4-year terms, and now they're 2-year terms. And representatives have always been 2 years, kind of a mirror of DC, of our US Congress, but with just a 2-year difference for the senators.
Hmm.
But yeah, it'd be kind of nice if it was representatives and senators were all 4-year terms, because then you aren't having to campaign ev all the time.
Yeah, it seems like you get elected and you've got a bit of a honeymoon for a few months, and then after that first session is done, campaigns are starting,
It is.
challengers are
Yep.
declaring, and then
Yep.
that second session, you're doing both. You're trying to get stuff done while at the same time campaigning.
Yep.
On the other hand, imagine the voters, make the wrong choice, whatever that might be, and you're stuck with the person for 4 years. That's a long time.
That's true too. It is. A lot can change. Look at our presidency. Look how things have changed in just 3 years.
Yeah.
It's the inflation is just out of control. When two people can't even go have lunch for less than $70 now, it's
Hmm.
unbelievable.
Uh,
So, yeah.
we'll see what happens 4 years from now. We're still
Yes.
around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're
Uh,
right. If we're still around, because things are really changing that way.
well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. Is there anything we haven't covered or any closing thoughts?
No, I just hope that people will show up in force at the polls this primary. Primaries are usually a low attendance, but I think people are paying a little more attention. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the turnout ends up being. And I'm just praying and hoping that I'm going to get in there this next January. I'm really looking forward to being able to serve our district and our state.
Faye Thompson, candidate for House of Representatives, District 8, Seat B. Thank you.